Hi, my name is Abigail McMillan, and today I'll be giving a presentation on the history and significance of foot binding in China. So, suffering for beauty is a concept familiar to most women, but the ideal was taken to the extreme in ancient China upon the start of a tradition known as foot binding. So, to take you through the process, it began in childhood when a girl was 5 or 6. This is because young bones are soft and they break more easily. The process began by having a girl have her feet submerged into hot water and her toenails clipped short. The feet were then massaged and oiled before all the toes except the big toe were broken, and then bound flat against the sole, making a triangle shape. Next, the arch was strained. Girls were often forced to walk long distances in order to hasten the breaking of their arches. Finally, the feet were bound in place using a silk strip. After 2 to 5 years, the process was complete. However, the feet typically remained bound for the rest of their lives, with bandages and strips of either silk or cotton, depending on what the family could afford. The practice is said to have originated among court dancers in the early Song dynasty. According to a famous story, Emperor Li Yu had a favorite concubine, Yao Niang, who was a dancer. She bound her feet into a crescent shape and danced for him, gaining his favor. Therefore, it is believed that foot binding started with the royal court and then spread throughout China as a means for women of higher elite status to gain power and means of mobility for women in general. A small foot in China was just like a tiny waist in Victorian England. It represented the height of female elegance and sophistication. For families with daughters looking to marry, foot size translated into its own form of currency and a means of achieving upward mobility. The most desirable bride possessed a 3-inch foot, known as a jinlian, or a golden lotus, followed by a respectable 4-inch foot, a silver lotus, but 5 inches or longer was dismissed as an iron lotus. The lack of mobility caused by foot binding would not have greatly affected working women in the traditional household employment of spinning, weaving, sewing, and embroidery. But in the regions of China where women were more involved in agricultural work, foot binding was less common. In terms of the influence of the time period, this was during Neo-Confucianism, which placed an extra emphasis on chastity, obedience, and diligence. It was believed that a good wife should have no other desire than to serve her husband, produce a son, and serve the state. Women were expected to act in accord with the way of the sages. Thus, the act of foot binding and the pain and the physical limitations that it created became a woman's demonstration of her own commitment to Confucian values. The assembly of lotus shoes ultimately became a large source of domestic production in small factories. However, many of the shoes and accessories were still made by the girls themselves. Examples were often sent to prospective husbands to show their skill in embroidery, as well as the size of their feet. The colors and symbols that appeared on the lotus shoes had designated meanings and messages. Red, for example, is the color of festivity, celebration, and virtue. Yellow was specifically associated with the emperor, empress, and the heir apparent. There were no specific rules with regard to the use of blue, green, and purple. White was the color of mourning in China and thus had many strict rules regarding its use. Many other symbols represented good luck, good health, and longevity, or they indicated what season the shoe was meant to be worn. The floral symbols for the 4 seasons were plum blossoms for spring, peonies for summer, lotus for fall, and chrysanthemums for winter. 1912 saw the fall of the Qing dynasty and the introduction of the nationalist government of the Republic of China. They officially banned foot binding, but with little success. It was not until the communists came into power in 1949 that the practice was forbidden and remains officially banned in China to this day. When the communist government came into power in 1949, they regarded the practice of foot binding as an archaic means of preventing women from taking a more active role in the economic life of the country. By the end of the 19th century, more and more groups were active in fighting against foot binding. However, this actually led to unexpected consequences. In particular, many bound women were abandoned by their husbands who wished to be perceived as modern, and women with bound feet started to feel ashamed of their appearance and at times were even publicly ridiculed. In a relatively short time, foot binding had gone from a deeply established tradition to one that was gathering public hostility. Overall, it remains a crucial event and time period in Chinese history with the broken bones of many women to prove it. Thank you.